It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of the longest running and highest rated live action comedy TV shows in history, and that's for good reason. It takes a normal sitcom approach but removes any and all boundaries, and that helps it cut straight to its core of comedy.
We get after it, we jabber jaw, we go tit for tat, we have our little differences.
14 seasons in, you would think there would be more consensus on which season or run of seasons is the best, but it honestly feels up to personal interpretation because of how true to form the show has stayed. Some people seem to prefer some of the high production ideas of more recent seasons, and others enjoy the simple, chaotic setting of the earlier years, but perhaps the least talked about season is the show's first.
Don't turn this around. Wait. Really? You think so?
Before Danny DeVito came into the fold and It's Always Sunny garnered a massive fan base, the show began as a group of friends shooting scenes in their apartment before turning into a low-budget show that placed no restrictions on any gag. Without the now infamous Frank Reynolds, it's easy to think back and say that Season 1 walked so that the rest of the series could run, but that's not the case at all. Season 1 of It's Always Sunny held no punches, and feels like it's cut from the exact same comedic cloth as many of the years that followed, which is why fans should look back at those first 7 episodes in the same hilarious light as the rest of the series. To be fair, the first season of It's Always Sunny is not underrated. For critics that may be the case, but fans tend to support it equally or even more than some later seasons.
I'm gonna make big money in California.
With this crap?
That being said, even in Season 13, which seems to be considered the show's biggest descent from its usual structure, some great episodes still get a lot of run compared to some that kicked off the show in the first place. It's well documented that It's Always Sunny began as a Curb Your Enthusiasm type of show, featuring the lives of struggling actors conceived by Rob McElhenney. Rob McElhenney and his friends Glenn Howerton, Charlie Day, and Jordan Reed, McElhenney's girlfriend at the time, who would later be replaced by Caitlin Olsen, started filming themselves in their apartments with their own cameras, tape, and other equipment. Over time, the show morphed into the series concept we have today. McElhenney, Howerton, and Day became the show's stars and producers, and some of the core jokes from 2 of the homemade pilot episodes made it into the 7-episode first season of It's Always Sunny. The show's budget was less than a third of the network standard, and the ratings were subpar after its first year.
They'd be out of business in a week's time.
That's exactly what I said.
But FX liked the show, which prompted It's Always Sunny to attach DeVito to the series for Season 2 onward and help cement the show in TV history.
And we were going berserk. She loves that kind of stuff. And I admit I do too.
Aside from what was going on behind the scenes, Season 1 of It's Always Sunny fits in perfectly with the series run, and other than the lack of DeVito, if you picked up any of these episodes and mixed them in with the seasons that followed, you probably wouldn't even notice. It has all of the off-base political and social commentary, the ridiculous schemes, and even some of the quick-hitter jokes are the same. Most fans of the show probably remember how Charlie described this woman in Season 12, when the gang discusses slurs while they're trying to decide who deserves a scratch-off lottery ticket, but do you remember that Charlie says the same word, uncensored, within 5 minutes of the first episode ever?
He's like, you stupid hen, go get me grease,
and this and that. Why?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
As the show went along, it referenced back to ideas from pretty much every episode of the first season in some way. It always feels natural because the core of the show is no different. It's the same crude and hilarious humor from day one until now. That's not to say the show hasn't changed at all. In fact, in many ways, it's quite different from later iterations of the show. First of all, the low production value is pretty obvious. Some of the camera shots just feel odd, the lighting can be pretty inconsistent, and even the audio gets a bit overmodulated or drowned out from time to time, but nobody is watching It's Always Sunny for the camera work or the audio quality. It's all about the laughs, and in some ways, the guerrilla-style camera has become a staple of the series because of how well it works with the chaotic nature of the show itself. Plus, although the show feels so similar to the seasons that followed, it's easy to see where some of the foundation is not as fully fleshed out, specifically in the characters themselves. Dennis has some minor shades of his predatory, sociopathic behavior, and Dee is still written off by the male trio in a lot of ways, but both are portrayed as the more intelligent members of the group that just haven't fulfilled their potential, which isn't necessarily the case later on.
But it's all good, Frank. Hey, turns out Boggs, he didn't hit it out of the park every single time at bat.
Charlie basically feels like the same easy-to-make-fun-of degenerate right off the bat, but the main difference comes from Mac. Mac is used as a religious right-wing foil to Dee, who is seen as the most liberal, and that facet of Mac's character stays consistent through a lot of the show, but it also feels like he is supposed to be a jack-of-all-trades in some instances of the first season. He goes from huffing glue with Charlie to being a bit of a ladies' man to just being a dumb jock. Some might point to this as a good reason to just stick with the seasons that come after it, because everybody on the show has a weird, psychotic niche that feels steady, but even when the characters aren't at their peak forms, the show is still written as if they are.
Yeah, I did knock either Pat down and I cleared him.
I'm sorry?
Dennis and Dee are shown to be the more academic of the four members of the gang, but the episode that idea is introduced shows them trying to flex that and completely flopping, as they try to decide how to handle talking to Charlie about being molested as a child, which they are also incorrect about.
And the best part of it, actually, for me now is the fact that everybody thinks that I've been molested. So, in a way, my life is ruined. In the meantime, I'm gonna go in the back office and cry and cry and cry and drink for a while.
Mac holds himself as a firm believer in a higher power that prompts him to take a pro-life stance in episode 2 before going back on his word after he thinks he got a girl pregnant. This is the exact same premise in season 14 when he wants his dog Poppins to get an abortion, thinking it will keep her alive, and Charlie presses him on being pro-life.
Well, you gotta kill those babies then.
What? Dude, what the hell? I thought you were all pro-life and everything.
I am, but this is different. This affects me.
I'm pregnant!
What?
I'm pregnant!
You gotta get an abortion!
Season 1 is impressive because it set up the show so well that it barely had to change anything over the course of its 14-year run. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't go over the addition of Frank for Season 2. There is no doubt in my mind that Frank Reynolds is one of the funniest TV show characters I have ever seen, and his addition probably kept the show from being canceled in its early stages.
Hi, I'm your new captain, Frank. I'm going to take you up the river. Okay, here we go.
What happened to Captain Tom?
Captain Tom turned out to be a goddamn junkie.
But while Frank may be the funniest character on the show, I also feel like he's one of the least important to its foundation.
Bullshit. Derivative.
Think of it like this. Out of all 5 main cast members of the show, if you were forced to take one out of the series for good and still try to get to the 14th season mark It's Always Sunny is at, DeVito might be the first to go for me if you need to keep the dynamic of the show. Obviously, that's ironic because he kept the show from being cut in the first place, but putting aside the draw of a big name like DeVito, the dynamic of the cast feels more driven by other characters. Season 13 proved that Dennis moves the show forward in a lot of ways, after some of his extended absences after Howerton got the lead role in AP Bio, and Dee tends to be the antithesis to many of the guys' plots that allows them to devolve more and more.
I mean, look, people are showing up to a bar that doesn't even have a sign and serves only one old-timey disgusting drink that nobody likes. God damn, I hate gin. Dee, you bitch.
Mac might be a fair answer, but he normally bridges the gap between Dennis's overcomplicated, control-freak nature and the depravity of Charlie and Frank, which is an important middle ground that pretends to tackle real-world issues. That would leave Charlie getting the boot, and although he and Frank are probably the most similar of any of the main characters, it's a double-edged sword because of how funny they both are in their own right.
Look what I can do!
The correct answer is you keep all of them, because they all round out the show to be the classic that it is today, and I am not at all saying that DeVito is expendable in any way, but if that was the scenario, I might lean that way because of how effectively we saw the original 4 work together. Season 1 may not have killed it commercially back in 2005, but it succeeded in practice, and that's why it fits in seamlessly with the rest of the series 15 years later. With such a low budget and the lack of a big-name star, Season 1 is probably not the best season of It's Always Sunny, but it deserves to be in the conversation with the years that followed. A lot of shows are defined by before and after they jump the shark, and maybe once It's Always Sunny is over, we'll have a clearer view of when that was. But right now, it's pretty hard to tell.
I forgot about your stupid, strange connection with each other.
If and when Season 15 gets picked up by FX, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia will become the longest-running live-action comedy in television history, and it's because of outstanding writing and unafraid humor that drew in and retained its loyal fan base. It's hard to believe that the show has gone a decade and a half with so few duds, but the strong and underappreciated beginnings set it up for great success.
Well, I don't know about that, though.
Oh,
Mac, no, wait, hold on. Okay, hold on a second. Hear me out, though. Hear me out. It wasn't that long ago that we were in the same position as these youngsters, right?